Hey everyone, I have a really deeply personal story to share with you today. The title of this live is that food was never the problem. It was the teacher that I always needed. So if you are somebody who has ever hated your body, I want to tell you a story. Not as a wellness educator, not as a former teacher, but just as a woman who knows exactly what that feels like. My name is Nikki from Nikki Living Naturally, and I am the founder of a movement called the Healthy Living Revolution, where I help people break free from the systems and the lies that keep them stuck, sick, weak, and dependent and disconnected so that they can live and thrive naturally. So the story starts many, many moons ago when I got pregnant with my very first son. It was 2 weeks after my 21st birthday is when I had him, so I was 20 years old. And when I was pregnant with him, I more than doubled my body weight. I went from an 86-pound young woman on a teeny tiny frame of barely 5 feet tall. My driver's license says I'm 5 feet tall. If you've ever met me in person, you know, it might be a smidge shorter than that, but I digress. So needless to say, doubling my body weight on a tiny, tiny frame felt nothing less than absolutely uncomfortable. So I did not recognize myself anymore. I felt very disconnected. I felt lost. I felt ashamed, like deeply ashamed of my body. And I became absolutely obsessed with trying to fix myself. I dove in and I did everything that the experts told me to do. I hired personal trainers. I followed every diet to man. I weighed my food. I measured my food. I counted calories. I tracked points. I forced myself to eat protein every few hours, even when it literally made me feel sick. I literally remember gagging down protein, just thinking to myself, there has to be a better way, but this is what the experts said to do, so that is what I do. And the more that I tried to control my body, the more disconnected I became from it. Food literally consumed my thoughts. I know there's a lot of women who can relate to what I'm going to share right now. My thoughts were consumed every single day with what should I eat? When should I eat? How much should I eat? Is this food good? Is this food bad? And if I ate something that was quote unquote off plan, I literally was just ridden with guilt. Again, I felt more ashamed. I felt like I had failed. And eventually that spiral became an eating disorder. Therapy did help me understand where some of those patterns were coming from, but ironically, the solutions and the tools that were being offered to me kept me more and more focused on what was outside of me instead of what was inside of me. I had more rules, I had more systems, I had to seek help from more experts, and I experienced more and more and more disconnection. And then one day, I literally, out of complete desperation, I threw my hands up in the air and I freaking quit everything. And I fired my personal trainer. I threw away every diet rule I had ever been told I had to follow. I stopped chasing everyone else's definition of health. And instead, I bought one book. And the title of that book was What Happens When Women Stop Hating Their Bodies. Then I took myself to my favorite restaurant, which was a pizza restaurant that I grew up going to as a kid called Gina's Pizza. And I ordered what was called the Rasta salad, which is like a half pasta salad, half green salad. And if you, I'm sure you could imagine, pasta was a forbidden food, carbs were the enemy, and it was like forbidden fruit on the tree in the Garden of Eden. And I ordered the creamiest ranch dressing that you could ever imagine. And I sat there for the first time ever. I sat alone in a restaurant. And I had given myself permission to have this food without guilt, without food rules, without bargaining, without promises to work it off tomorrow. Have you ever been there? I'll eat this today. I'll just work out extra hard tomorrow. And for the first time in years, I listened to my body instead of what everyone else was telling me to do. I ate very, very slowly. and I noticed that I was hungry, and then I noticed the moment when I became satisfied. I stopped because I genuinely felt complete. I didn't stop eating because my plate was empty. I didn't stop eating because a meal plan told me to. And that experience changed my life. That book, What Happens When Women Stop Hating Themselves, and that initial very first experience where I had thrown every rule and every diet and every just preconceived notion about what I should and shouldn't eat out the window, literally transformed my life and has become foundational to what I teach and I preach today. It wasn't foundational because there was something magical about the pasta, although it did taste amazing, or because it was the salad or the ranch dressing. It changed my life because I realized that my body had been speaking to me all along. I just couldn't hear it anymore. Years of dieting had drowned out its voice. Every expert became louder than my own intuition. I knew how many calories were in an apple before I was even actually hungry. I knew what time I was supposed to eat before I knew whether or not my body even wanted food. I knew how to count macronutrients. I knew meal timing. I knew protein targets. I knew cheat days. I knew good foods and bad foods, but I had absolutely no idea what fullness actually felt like anymore in my body. And I want you to think about how crazy that is. That every healthy baby on this planet is born knowing exactly when they're hungry and exactly when they've had enough food. No one teaches an infant intuitive eating. It's built into us. It's part of our original design. And somewhere along the way, we stopped trusting ourselves. We began trusting everyone else instead. We hand over our authority to diet books, to fitness influencers, to doctors, to personal trainers, to apps and food scales and meal plans. And eventually, we know everything that there is to know about nutrition except ourselves. That was me. I had become incredibly educated and completely disconnected. And so I made myself a promise that before I learned another food rule, I was going to relearn my own body. I began asking different questions. Am I actually hungry? Literally, have you ever stopped to ask yourself, am I actually hungry? What sounds nourishing to me right now? How does this food make me feel an hour later? That's a powerful question. What actually gives me energy? What leaves me feeling sluggish and tired after I eat? Am I eating because I'm hungry or because I'm stressed out? Or because I'm lonely? Or because I'm bored? Or because the clock says that it's lunchtime? I became curious instead of judgmental. And that's when something incredible shifted for me. I started trusting, or my body actually started trusting me again. And I want to pause here because I think that we have gone incredibly wrong when it comes to intuitive eating. And I think that the concept itself has become very misunderstood. And what I am teaching and preaching is not permission to eat whatever you want, whenever you want, without any consequences, because that is not farther from the truth. Food is information. Nutrition does matter, but it's not another fad diet wrapped up in a fancy name. It's about developing a healthy relationship with food. It's a conversation. It's a lifelong practice of tuning in, of paying attention. It's learning to distinguish between emotional hunger and physical hunger. It's recognizing which foods genuinely nourish your body and which ones leave you feeling depleted. It's discovering that satisfaction matters as much as nutrition. Because when you're satisfied, you're far less likely to keep searching for something else to fill the void. Intuitive eating is not about lowering your standards. It's about raising your awareness. It's about rebuilding trust with the body that you've spent years, decades sometimes, trying to control. Your body is not asking for punishment. It is asking for partnership. And that single shift changed everything for me. And years later, something that my former career as a teacher suddenly clicked. So long before I became a wellness educator, I taught in a classroom. And one of the first things that we learned in graduate school was about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Every single teacher understands this principle, that a child whose brain believes that they are in danger cannot fully access learning, not because they're unintelligent or they're not capable, but because survival always comes before growth. If a child feels unsafe, if they feel hungry, if they feel scared, if they feel ashamed, if they feel overwhelmed, the brain always shifts into protection mode. You can teach the greatest lesson in the world, but until a child feels safe, learning becomes incredibly difficult. We've never blamed the child. We always understood the nervous system. And so now, years later, I have this realization that completely transforms the way that I think about health. So if that's true for learning, why wouldn't it also be true for healing? Why do we expect a body drowning in shame, living under chronic stress, constantly criticized in the mirror, always being told that it's not enough, to suddenly become healthy? What if your body isn't resisting you? What if it's actually protecting you? What if healing doesn't begin with another diet or a meal plan, but with creating an internal environment where your body finally feels safe enough to do what it was designed to do? That single question changed my life, and it literally became the foundation of everything that I teach and I preach and I live when it comes to my health and food as medicine and nutrition, and you got to nourish to flourish. Not because nutrition isn't important, because it absolutely is. Not because movement isn't important, and you know how passionate I am about movement, because it is important. But sustainable health does not begin with a meal plan. It begins with a real relationship with your body, a relationship built on trust instead of fear, curiosity instead of judgment, partnership instead of punishment. And today, if you know me, if you follow me, you know that I eat whole, nourishing foods because I genuinely love how they make me feel. I've taken the time to discover those series of questions to figure out how I actually want to feel, not just in the moment when I'm putting it to my lips or putting it in my mouth, but how I want to feel an hour later, how I want to feel the next day when I wake up. To develop that healthy relationship is absolutely imperative. I move my body because I celebrate what it can do. So I went from having exercise addiction and following a certain regimen to moving my body in a way that feels good, that makes me feel alive. I choose habits that create vitality because they support the way that I want to live, not because I'm trying to earn my worth. And I want you guys to listen to me. Every woman I know has at some point in time in their life been stuck in the trap of trying to earn their worth. And you need to stop, because you are inherently worthy. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. You are perfect in every way. And just like a child cannot be shamed into learning, you cannot be shamed into healing. Food was never the real problem. Food was actually the classroom. The real lesson was learning to trust myself again. And that lesson didn't just transform the way I ate, it transformed the way that I live. And if this story resonates with you, I want you to know that this is just the beginning. Food freedom is one piece of a much bigger picture, because when you reconnect with your body's original intelligence, you begin to see every area of your life differently. And that's the journey that I have devoted my life to living and to teaching, and not because I have all the answers, but because I've walked this path from disconnection to freedom. And I personally believe that every woman deserves to experience that kind of freedom for herself. If this message has resonated with you, or you are curious about intuitive eating, or you are on a journey to healing your relationship with food, I just want you to know that I see you. and I'm here for you, and I'd love for you to get in my inbox for us to have a conversation about some of the things that I did to heal that relationship. If you are new to this journey and you're tired of diets and you're tired of food elimination and restriction to try to meet certain goals, I definitely recommend that you pick up that book, What Happens When Women Stop Hating Their Bodies. The core principles within that book will absolutely help you, give you the best start that you could possibly have. And again, thank you so much for taking the time to tune in and listen. I just am so grateful for you. Thank you.